I have found something that I haven't seen anyone else talk about, and I think it solves one of the biggest mysteries of FNAF. Who or what is buried in the dirt mound? And to be honest, the answer is very simple. You don't have to overcomplicate things. You just have to think about it from the perspective of the creator, Scott, as well as the overall big picture of FNAF 6. But before I release the bombshell, let's understand a little bit about Midnight Motorist. Because in order to come to my conclusion, we have to understand what we are working with. Midnight Motorist is one of 3 minigames in which you can purchase in FNAF 6. In this minigame, if you play it and get towards the end, there is a little hole that you can get your car to go through, which then gives you a whole nother minigame. Now, I don't need to go into detail about what exactly happens, but here's a really quick rundown. We're driving a purple car and the driver is a little mustard man. You can stop by in a clearing and view the dirt mound. You can also drive to a building called Junior's, which you get denied access to. You drive to your house, a person watching TV refers to someone else in the house, says that they've had a rough day. You go and bang on the door, you walk around the house and see that they have ran off to that place again. Pretty basic, right? Oh, if only it was. The thing that mainly confused me about Midnight Motorist is how you can't take it really at face value like the other 2 minigames. Fruity Maze is giving us a more in-detail description on how William Afton lured Susie and possibly showing us the type of tactics he used during the MCI. The security puppet minigame shows us the death of Charlotte in more greater detail. Very basic, easy. The Midnight Motorist is anything but that. So then why did Scott give us these 3 games in FNAF 6? Scott told us that FNAF 6 was supposed to tighten up loose ends for the FNAF story. And so looking at these minigames that way, you can kind of make more sense about it. He gives us the answer as to why the security puppet acts weird in FNAF 2. He gives us more detailed information about Susie and the MCI. And I believe Midnight Motorist tells us more about William Afton, how he committed the MCI, and the fact that he wasn't also a perfect killer. Now, for those of you who do not believe that the minigame Midnight Motorist has to do with William Afton, let's address that. Because in order to agree with the theory that I'm proposing, you have to believe that it is talking about William Afton. So here's a quick rundown of all of the evidence to support the fact that it is William Afton, and I will talk about how some people believe it is not and give the evidence for that as well, so you can make up your own mind. First of all, we are driving a purple car, which we have seen in the FNAF franchise as referring to William Afton. Second, the house that we see in the game looks very similar to the FNAF 4 house, which we see in the FNAF 4 menu title screen. Now, if this is all the evidence there was, I would be a lot more skeptical that this is actually William Afton, even though I think the car explains a lot of it. But then 5 Laps at Freddy's comes out, and I don't think that we can deny the evidence that is in 5 Laps at Freddy's. One of the tracks is designated wholly to Midnight Motorist, and they even have a car called Midnight Motor. It's a recreation of the purple car in which we drive in Midnight Motorist, and in the game files, it literally calls it a killer ride, the perfect vehicle to get away from a crime scene. And the small antenna decoration is of Spring Bonnie. Now, what crime could 5 Laps at Freddy's be referring to? Well, I believe the game is referring to the murder of Charlotte Emily, in which William Afton murdered her outside of a Freddy Fazbear's pizza location, and then speeds away. Midnight Motorist in the game files is even called Later That Night, suggesting the fact that this takes place directly after Charlotte Emily's murder. Because in the security puppet minigame, you see the tire tracks of William Afton driving away, and the rain animation is the exact same on both minigames. Now, some of you are probably screaming at your screens, but Mac, he's a mustard color, he's not purple. And I hear you. I for a while believed that this was not William Afton simply because of that one detail. But once you pile up so much evidence, you can't deny it. And the reason why I think Scott made this a different color is because Sister Location had come out, and Michael Afton was now depicted as purple, and he didn't want us to get confused with Michael or William Afton. And so he used the next best color that best represented William Afton, a yellowish orange color. And I think by putting the Spring Bonnie antenna on the Midnight Motorist car in 5 Laps at Freddy's, he's literally confirming this. And so I personally believe that it is William Afton. But some people believe that it could be another person, possibly Henry Emily, because Henry Emily's shirt in the character encyclopedia is very close to the same color that this mustard man is. Some believe that it is a MCI victim parent, coming home and finding out that their child has been lured out the window by William Afton or possibly another animatronic. But let's slowly debunk each one of these theories. First of all, if this is a MCI victim parent, how come they're just now realizing their kid is missing in 1987 when the MCI took place, in my opinion, in 1983? Well, the dice that is on the Midnight Motor car in Five Nights at Freddy's literally has 87, which it is impossible to do on a dice, so they mean something. Also, something that I think that's interesting that was pointed out by some fellow FNAF theorists, the first car that was made that was able to go 200 miles an hour was a Ferrari from 1987. 200 miles an hour is the max speed that we reach in the Midnight Motorist game. Also, in Security Breach, there's a little bit of a hint about it being in 1987 as well. In Roxy Raceway, we can find a purple car that is built out of daycare blocks sitting next to a gas pump which pumps 87 octane. Now, even though, yes, this is a very common gas to be pumped, the fact that it's being linked to a purple car here I find very interesting. That, paired with the dice, I think very nicely confirms the fact that this game does take place in 1987. And I think helps confirm the date of Charlotte Emily's death, being the last in the FNAF timeline in my opinion. And I think this same evidence can go towards debunking the fact that it could be Henry Emily. Instead, I think we need to take a step back and figure out what Scott was really trying to tell us if he's talking about William Afton here. And I think it really has to do with the mound. Who or what is buried here? Now you might ask if we can figure out who the runaway child is that can better help us understand who exactly this mustard man really is, if it's the father. Some people believe that it is the crying child, although I don't believe this, because if the game takes place in 1987, the crying child died in 1983, so that doesn't make sense whatsoever. Some people believe it could actually be the son of Henry Emily that we hear about in the books, called Sammy, although I don't think there's enough evidence here because that's something strictly only mentioned in the books, never in the FNAF game universe. And if it was an MCI victim parent, that's never been confirmed anywhere throughout the games. Also, I would like to point out, I think it's very highly unlikely that William Afton did much of his kidnapping far away from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I think he mostly did it in the pizzeria wearing the spring Bonnie suit. Also, in the Midnight Motorist game, if he was luring a child using the spring Bonnie suit, it wouldn't have worked because it was raining outside. Now, some of you might say, well, it might not have been raining the entire day and you kidnapped the child during the day, but I don't think that's the case here. And you'll see why here in a moment. But who do I think the runaway is? Well, today I'm giving a direct answer to what I believe the mound is hiding. I'm still currently working on my theory on who I believe the runaway is, but I think for now it's safe to say it's possibly Michael. Although I am not completely narratively satisfied with this answer, and I hope to find a better answer soon. So if any of you fellow FNAF theorists in the comments want to help me out, feel free to do so, please. But now it's time to designate what is buried in the mound. There has been a lot of theories of who all it is. Could it be the crying child? Could it be Elizabeth Afton, an MCI victim, heck, a DCI victim? Or maybe, somehow, Mrs. Afton. Or a very common theory, and one that I really liked from John FNAF. Is it Susie's dog? Well, I'm here to say I have a new contender for what could be buried here, and I think it narratively feels satisfying in all ways. But first of all, why do I think it's not the other options? I don't believe it is the crying child, simply because when he died in 1983, it was a very public event, and it wouldn't make sense for him to be buried in this secret grave out in the middle of nowhere. He was most likely buried somewhere very normal. I don't believe it is a MCI victim because we know what happened to them. They were stuffed into the Freddy Fazbear's costumes. Now you could say it's a DCI victim, although I don't think there's a lot of evidence to back that up. It's more just a claim. And some people don't even believe the DCI even happened. As for Mrs. Afton being buried here, I think this is probably the biggest stretch. Mainly because nowhere really in FNAF have we ever really truly seen Mrs. Afton. I know some of you argue that the person sitting in the couch in Midnight Motorist is Mrs. Afton. But here's one little problem. This person is freaking bald and looks to have a mustache. How the heck is this a woman in my opinion? They don't even have hair. At least Charlotte Emily has hair that seems to be long. And I think Scott wouldn't do us that bad here, guys. Now, I know some of you might bring up the table at security breach, although I've heard some people talk about that this could be referring to Edwin Murray's family, not actually William Afton at this point. And so there's no real evidence here to prove the fact that Mrs. Afton is a real character and therefore is actually buried in this mound. Now we come to the last two, the two that I struggled with the most: Elizabeth Afton and Susie's dog. So in order for this to be the grave of Elizabeth Afton, the incident of Circus Baby's Pizza World already had to have happened, and William Afton had to have already created animatronic killing machines. Which, if this is in the year of 1987, I think there's enough time here for that to be the case. In fact, in my last video, I pushed the idea that it's possible that Circus Baby's Pizza World took place in the years of either 1984 or 1985, giving us plenty of time for this to actually be the grave of Elizabeth Afton. But that is not the theory I'm pushing today. Even though I think that this is possible, I think that there would be something here that would actually help us understand this. Some clue, whether it was from one of the other minigames, to help us point to the fact that this is Elizabeth Afton. Basically, this is a theory with no evidence. As for Susie's dog, this is the one that I believed for a long time. After watching John FNAF's video about a year ago on his ultimate Midnight Motorist theory, I was hooked. He took something that was from one of the other minigames in FNAF 6 and made it make sense. Until recently, when I was replaying the game, something popped into my head, something that would lead me on this 5-month rabbit trail to making this video. Because what if everything that John FNAF proposed about Fruity Maze showing us the fact that William Afton buried this dog could be interpreted in just a little bit of a different way to have a completely different outcome, one that I think is way more narratively satisfying than saying William Afton buried a dead dog. Because even though I like the theory, this is the only gripe that I have about it. Why would Scott do this? What was the point of making it the fact that this dirt mound was that of this dead dog? I never really quite got it, and that's the only thing that in the back of my head didn't sink in well. And so now it's time to drop my bombshell. And please don't click off the video because it is crazy, but there is evidence. I believe that what's buried in the dirt mound is William Afton's spring Bonnie suit. That's right, the suit that William Afton used to murder the MCI victims is buried in this mound. And before you think I'm absolutely completely insane, let me just ask you one little question. What actually happened to the Spring Bonnie costume while William Afton was committing his murders? Obviously, we know the outcome of William Afton himself getting springlocked in a Spring Bonnie costume and becoming Springtrap, but just work with me here on what I am proposing. I think William Afton was a much smarter killer than what we thought, and I think that's what Fruity Maze connected to Midnight Motorist is trying to show us. You see, according to the newspapers, on June 26th, 2 children were lured into the back room, but as we know from the next newspaper, 3 more children were added to that roster. What if those 3 children came before the 2 that were murdered on June 26th, and the first one of those being Susie? And this, my friends, lines up perfectly with Wither Chica's line from FNAF UCN.
I was the first. I have seen everything.
She was literally the first, and she has indeed seen everything. That quote to me has always been stuck in the back of my mind. Why would Scott use this unless he's pointing us in the correct direction? The MCI victims, starting with Susie, truly did come first. And I think that's why Scott made Fruity Maze. He was showing us his personal favorite character of the MCI, Susie, and how William Afton lured her. So let's take a closer look at Fruity Maze and see how I came to the conclusion about Spring Bonnie. When you first boot up Fruity Maze, everything seems completely normal. You're playing as Susie, and you're picking up fruit along the maze, and you're trying to extend the time to get a better high score. But as you play this game, and I've played it multiple times, the very first weird sprite that you start seeing is that of a yellow rabbit sitting in a hole. Now, after you play the game a couple more times, this rabbit in the hole starts becoming a lot more prevalent, and you are then collecting a dead dog, and it even gets worse. The dead dog then looks like it's been smashed. You hear the sound of a car alarm. There's also a little white box and flowers that you pick up, and then that's when the game ends and cuts out, and you see Spring Bonnie standing behind you, saying, "He's not really dead, he's over here, follow me." Now let's think about this logically. We obviously know that William Afton used his car to hit and kill Susie's dog. But the big question is, and why I came to the conclusion about Spring Bonnie, is where did William actually hit the dog? If Susie is at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza playing this video game, she most likely didn't bring her dog to the pizzeria and William Afton hit it there. No, William Afton most likely actually hit the dog purposely in front of her own home. You see, I think William Afton knew exactly who Susie was. Just like modern day serial killers, they do a lot of planning and even watch their victim for a long time. I think William Afton knew she was a local child who had a dog, and he needed to do something that would make her be vulnerable and more likely to trust him. And so I believe he hits her dog in front of her home, and that's what we are seeing here. And so it wouldn't make sense for William Afton, after he committed this act, for literally Susie and her family to see, to then come back and get the dog and then bury it. That doesn't really make sense. He just would have left it there. And then waited for Susie to come to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, sneak up behind her, and then be like, hey, you know what? Your dog is still alive. He's over here. Follow me. It gives him more power in the situation than just putting on a random Bonnie suit and walking up to a kid and start talking to her. So let's talk about the specific sprites that we see in Fruity Maze and what they mean. For one, I think there's something more special about the sprite of the yellow rabbit sitting in the hole because it's different from everything else. This sprite is not one that you can collect, and it is the very first anomaly sprite that shows up when you play the game. The different dead dog sprites as well as the box and flowers are all ones that you are able to collect, almost like they are directly associated with Susie. It's possibly saying that Susie buried her own dog, and that would make a little bit more logical narrative sense here. But the bunny sprite is completely separate because it has to do with William Afton. It's either referring to him burying his Sue after he committed the murder, or possibly unburying it to get prepared for the murder. But now, what does William Afton do with the Spring Bonnie costume? Because most likely after this incident, the Spring Bonnie costume needed to be cleaned and prepared for the next murder. Also, William Afton most likely needed to lay low for a while and not draw so much attention to himself. And so he takes the Spring Bonnie costume and buries it in a box in the ground. Also, it's possible that the intended decoration of Spring Bonnie on the Midnight Motorist car was a flag to us to bring Spring Bonnie more into the picture, also confirming that it was William Afton. Now here's another thing that I think helps prove this. According to the FNAF 1 newspapers, Spring Bonnie was caught on camera while he was luring the final two children into the back room on June 26th. Now whether or not it was actually William Afton who was convicted for the crimes is a whole nother ballgame. Personally, I don't think it was him, but the police would have been on high alert to find the Spring Bonnie costume and take it in for evidence, which would mean that they would have taken it from the location itself. But we obviously see Spring Bonnie later on down the timeline. And I think William Afton had enough time after the two victims on June 26 to go and bury his costume like he did multiple times before and lay low for a while. In fact, after those final two victims in his close call with the law, William Afton decided to do something different. He was no longer going to use his Spring Bonnie suit, which he had buried. He was going to build something bigger and better and more ingenious than anyone has ever thought of before. And that led into his creation of the Funtime animatronics and everything that took place after that. But as we all know, even the best of serial killers always make mistakes, and I think that's one of the things that Midnight Motorist is showing us. Even though William Afton planned out all of his victims and everything was so precisely well planned that he never got caught, how come he murdered Charlie driving his own car in the back of a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza wearing no disguise, just flat out commits this terrible crime? Well, I think it's possible he did this out of spite after his own daughter Elizabeth died. He was angry at Henry, and over the years, that anger boiled up to this point. He'd been drinking, and he sees Charlie and was an opportunist, taking the opportunity to murder her outside of Freddy's. But after he does it, he realizes what he's done, and on the way home, he stops by the mound, realizing the fact he did not wear his Spring Bonnie suit and that he had been exposed. And hoping and praying that he wouldn't actually get caught, he stops by the bar again, although isn't allowed back inside, and so drives home contemplating what he had done, and kicking himself for how stupidly he did it. Something else that has to do with the FNAF phone calls, and some of you might mention in the comments, is, well, Mac, in 1987, phone guy in Night 6 mentions the spring Bonnie suit being used from the back room to do something terrible at the Freddy's 2 location. So if it was buried at that point, why is phone guy talking about it? And that was the biggest hurdle that I had to face with this theory. And there are two possible answers on how to explain this. The first one being, in the FNAF 4 minigames, we see, and I am personally convinced, that there was more than just one spring Bonnie costume. In this scene, we play as the crying child, where we see William Afton helping a performer put on a spring Bonnie costume. But if we just keep walking just a little bit, we can see the shadows of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie performing on their stage. And we just saw someone put on another Spring Bonnie costume. So it's possible that Fazbear Entertainment had multiple of these Springlock costumes. Another theory, and one that I think is rather interesting, is what if the Night 6 phone call of FNAF 2 does not happen in 1987? What if this phone call came from 1983, the first Freddy's location, and the night after the incident of the murder of Susie? Because in FNAF 1, we don't actually have a Night 6 phone call, because technically we're not even supposed to be there. So why is it randomly in FNAF 2 we all of a sudden get a recorded message from Ralph for Night 6? To me, I think it makes perfect sense to say we're not really supposed to be there, and we find this recording from the past location, giving us context to what possibly happened at the old location. Because where in FNAF 2 do we actually see a spare yellow suit in the back room? We don't anywhere. And honestly, what phone guy says about the birthday party being planned for the next day fits more in line with the FNAF 4 minigames than it does FNAF 2. That birthday party that he's referring to could be the crying child's birthday party. And so instead of taking all 6 of these phone calls coming from the same week, the first 5 do, but the last one, the one that Ralph didn't record for this year, 1987, was actually from 1983. And those would be my answers for that specific question. And there you have it, my new theory on Midnight Motorist. Now, I know this does not answer everything with Midnight Motorist. We still have big questions. Who's the runaway? Who's the couch person? Who are the footprints of the animatronic? But I think for now, let's just focus on this, and I think the other answers will come eventually. And just keep in mind that this is only a theory. I don't believe I'm 100% right. It's just a fun and awesome idea that I wanted to share with you all. So have fun in the comments, remember to be respectful, and let's have fun solving Midnight Motorist together. So with that, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I will see you next time, and have a fantastic day.